All right, you've clearly figured out that I'm not here today uh, because unfortunately I got COVID. I had all my boosters possible, but it's just one of those things where I got it. I feel really good. I'm basically asymptomatic. The first day was pretty rough, but every day's gotten better. I'm in good spirits, and I'll be back Thursday. On Thursday, wear a mask just out of precaution. That's recommended from the CDC, so I'll be doing that to keep you safe. But yeah, this is this is it. So we'll be doing a lecture today. I'm going to walk you through the Inca. So here we go, world history. You got this. You won't get my jokes in person, so we'll just do it this way. All right. So I'm going to go full screen. What I need you to do is this. Before I start here, pull your notebook out. At the end of this lecture, I want you to be taking notes and on your notebook. And when I'm done, you are going to take a picture of your notes in your notebook using your camera on your Chromebook. So just be very clear. Pull your notes out now. Take notes like you normally would. If I'm going too fast, raise your hand. Let the substitute know that we need to pause. You're on the same page. We can pause the video, and then we'll go on. At the end of this, you'll upload it to Google Classroom. There'll be a turned-in spot for you there. So without further ado, let's get into the actual notes for the Inca. All right, so I gotta get this thing all set here. I think I'll be good. All right, go into present mode. So it's getting it all set. You should be pulling your notes out in the meantime. Fresh new set of notes. All right, there we go. The Inca. All right, what I'm gonna do first is, this is just a little check-in, see how you would have done on the last quiz. This is not scored. This is just, one, what accomplishment the Mayans achieved in astrology. You could say 360-day calendar, or you could say mapping of the stars or predicting eclipses. It's fine. 2, according to Mayan story, Papa Bowl, what did humans evolve from? You could say corn and water. 3, describe the Mayan custom of bloodletting. I think you know this one, but they punctured your tongue, tied a rope through it, and let the blood drip down for obvious reasons. 4, what they're trying to achieve. I know this is kind of old school, it's kind of just keeping you fresh. Remember, they wanted it to rain. 5, what sign were the Aztecs looking forward to start their empire? That's an eagle on top of a cactus with a snake in its talons or mouth. 6, what's a chinampa? Remember, a chinampa is a floating garden, and you need 3 crops. So you needed corn, which went up, beans, which tied around the corn, and then squash on the bottom. 7, why did the Aztecs perform a daily human sacrifice? They thought that they need to do it so the sun would rise every single day. 8, in Aztec society, what was the consequence of first-time public drunkenness? They shaved your head. There were a lot of people at MSU with shaved heads this last weekend. 9, what kind of religion did the Aztecs practice? Polytheistic, multiple gods and goddesses. 10, where did the Aztecs originate from? Modern-day Texas. All right. Name of the Aztec capital city would have been Tenochtitlan. Got to pronounce that correctly. Got to be safe. All right, let's talk about the Inca now. So, just put the Inca. It's good. We're going to take a look at the culture, traditions, and some of the limitations of the Incas. All right, so where we see who they actually are, okay, kind of helps you out here. This area here, it's a massive empire. And part of the reason why they can't go this direction is cut the Andes Mountains, which kind of cut them off. And going over this way, it's rainforest. So that's why you see this stretch from here all the way down to there. It's a long distance. All right. So what we know about the Incan architecture, they're known for their stonework. If you look at these different areas here, it's incredible. They cut and chisel these out and match them. There's no need for any kind of mortar or grout between the stones. So that is incredible ability. All right. So huge, beautiful walls of stone. Each stone was cut precise and they fit. So just make sure the first one there. They are known for their stonework. Right. You don't need this one right there, but they have to fit. Otherwise, the building will fall down. And like I said, they don't need mortar. Mortar is what we see between our buildings. Usually, we put cinder block down mortars, what kind of ties it all together. They didn't need that because the measurements were so precise. Pretty amazing. So first thing here, the Incas are known for their stonework. All right, stonework is incredible masons. You see some pictures here. All this stuff is just lining up perfectly. Unbelievable construction by the Incas. Right? Maybe you've seen this place. Maybe some of you have been here. We'll talk about it later in a bit. This is one of the imperial palace hangouts for the emperor, right? Machu Picchu. You can see all the incredible stonework way up here in the Andes. Careful your footing, though. All right, Machu Picchu. May get a chance to visit there someday. Incredible. So let's talk about the architecture. This one's kind of important. Some of the most best-known things about the Inca are still around this day is the Temple of the Sun. Right? So the Temple of the Sun is a really good example of Incan architecture. At one time, all of this thing was coated. All the walls were coated in gold before the Spanish arrived. Once the Spanish arrived, they take all that gold off. But yeah, it's just amazing. And the way they built this thing was that they timed it up with certain times of the year where the light would spill in. So you'd have this incredible light, and then you'd have this gold walls, and it would just shine. That's why they called it the Temple of the Sun. So just makes you know, the Temple of the Sun, one of the most important, lasting architectural pieces of the Inca. All right, gold, silver can be found, and what they've also discovered is they practice mummification. They put their former rulers in and their wives, they buried them there together. And part of the interesting thing about the Temple of the Sun was it's high enough up, it's cool enough that the cold temperatures kind of act as a preserver for some of these mummified bodies. So just like the ancient Egyptians who practiced mummification, same thing with the Inca. All right, the Incan road system. Write that one down. It's a big idea. Highlight it, bold it. We have to talk about these Incan roads. All right. So first of all, when we talk about the Incan road system, I want you to really focus in on number 2. They don't have any animals that they can ride. The Incas didn't domesticate any animals like the Europeans that had horses or even the use of camels from other civilizations. People are running on these roads, so there's no fast animal movement. Humans are having to become like great runners. This thing covered about 14,000 miles in length. And since they're up near the mountains, a lot of times they have to build bridges. So they would have these woven suspension bridges from one spot to the other. And that is what they use to complete this road suspension network system. If you were caught on this road without permission, it could be your death. So only the elite couriers and messengers could be on this Incan road system, and it was used to spread information, transmit knowledge from one side of the empire to the next. Because remember, the Incan Empire is huge. It goes from north to south, and they had to use this network of roads to transmit information. Right? So they're running it literally by themselves, going up sometimes giant mountains and sometimes crossing on these suspension bridges. But you had to have permission to be on the roads, otherwise it could be your death. All right, but this was the transformation hub. This was the internet of information for its day. You see some pictures of what it may have looked like, some of these woven suspension bridges, probably giving some of you the EBGBs right now, but that is what these would, this is a reconstruction of some of these bridges they would cross, they'd run. And then I think of my cross-country people who are running right now. Imagine that trip all the way up these hills to get to the top, and you're running usually barefoot, the Inca as well. So master runners, and they literally run from one spot to the next. They have a fresh set of legs, so they transmit the knowledge. Someone will rest, and the next person would then run. So it's a very fast way to get information from one side of the empire to the next. All right, so the language, just put language, and you can put Quechua. All right, so language was Quechua. It's the Inca were a people that transmitted their information verbally. Like, they didn't write things down. It's a spoken language. So this was their way to communicate within their empire. All right. Point number 3 is kind of the big one. It's an oral language, which means the Incans did not have a system of writing. And we've kind of talked about this, but when you don't have a system of writing, that doesn't help your civilization. So here's what I want you to do. Pause the video for a second. All right, someone can walk up there, press pause, and I want you to kind of turn to your partner and talk Why does a lack of like written language hinder a civilization? Talk it over. Talk about the negative side of that. And in about 2 or 3 minutes, press play again. All right, so pause, and then talk about why does a lack of writing really hinder a civilization's development. All right, good luck. When you're ready, press play again. All right, you press play. Good, you figured it out. When you can't transmit knowledge from one generation to the next without writing it down, it can become lost. You don't build upon other successive ideas. If you're just speaking and someone dies, you'll never understand their knowledge. You have to write it down. Really, writing is a playbook of codes to the next generation. So let's get to the closest thing they had. All right, they call it corpo. All right, there's your translation. That you'd never guess it from this, but it's corpo. All right, so this was the closest thing we had actually to a written language, but they use knots. So they would take this long system you see up top here, this rope, and then what they do is they'd have a rope going down from the top, and they tie knots at certain lengths, and those tied knots at different lengths would then transmit information. So when I say transit information, like the emperor or the royals might receive this rope, and then they draw knowledge. They were trained and realized what this meant. And another interesting thing about corpo is this was oftentimes worn by the runners on the Incan royal road. So they would have information, they tie it to themselves in their belts, almost like a belt, and they'd run this information, pass it to the next person, and that's how they transmitted knowledge. So sometimes the knots were color coded, meaning different things, but this was the closest thing to writing. So what they theorized might be on there could be birth or death rates, could be numbers for harvest, livestock, it could be your military strength, your enemy's military strength, dates. But critical information was passed on this thing called the corpo. All right, so this one here, if you need a little more time, feel free to kind of pause the video, take it all in, but this is the closest thing we have to writing. These things are run across the Incan royal road systems used by the leaders of the Incan Empire to decipher and to gain knowledge. All right, so we talk about agriculture. The Incas don't have flat land. So they have this really important idea I need you to latch onto, you need to get down for sure. It's called terrace agriculture. All right, so the Incans practiced terrace agriculture. So write that down, terrace agriculture. And let me show you what that looked like. It's this. They would literally carve into the side of a mountain, and then they'd have a flat area to grow their crops, and then they'd have this almost like step. That's what they call it, terrace. And they grow the crops this way because there's no flat land in the Incan Empire, and you need food, and you need to grow it. So that's what they did. They practiced this amazing thing called terraces. So terrace agriculture. The food of the Inca, very similar to the food of the Mayans and the Aztecs: corn, dehydrated potatoes, seed, very similar. One thing we do know, it's kind of interesting, kind of cute, they did domesticate llamas, which are kind of a cute animal, and guinea pigs. As you're thinking of, well, what are they doing with the guinea pigs? They're eating them. So they did domesticate the guinea pigs, and they ate guinea pigs. Right. The other thing that they could do, since the Incan Empire is right along the Pacific Ocean, there's a lot of fishing going on. So they relied on seafood and lots of fishing as well. So that's one thing definitely happening with the Incas. Terrace agriculture is a big one. Make sure you highlight it, make sure you circle it, make sure you bold it, and make sure you know that is unique to the Incas because they don't have any flat land that goes right with the mountains. All right, so terrace agriculture.